too. But first, y'all, we got to talk about Ohio State and Oregon. This is a game where, Josh, I picked Oregon to lose but cover. You picked Ohio State, I think, a little bigger. And that's okay. Like I'm okay with us saying we picked that game wrong. I think most of the country did as well. These early games, y'all, we're going to get some missed picks. This is also why we don't start a computer model until week 4. There's just so much we don't know. But Josh, one of the things that's been sort of a theme for us in discussing Ohio State that has gotten us killed in the comments, killed on Twitter, were all things we saw play out today. And I think for both of us, the defense was the biggest concern. But I want to start with maybe a positive for Ohio State fans, because there was a lot of people killing Stroud on Twitter. Maybe you disagree. In my opinion, I think he played well enough to win. Just getting us into this game discussion, what did you think about Stroud today? Did he play well enough to win, in your opinion?
I think he did. I mean, the expectation, if you're Ohio State, you're playing Oregon with the level of offense that Oregon's been rolling out recently, you shouldn't have ended up in a situation where you needed to score a lot of points, frankly. I mean, Oregon offensively, I think, is pretty limited. I didn't see a lot in that game that changed my mind on that aspect of them. Anthony Brown is not a particularly prolific downfield passer. I didn't feel like they used Brown's legs a ton. And I also didn't think Oregon really played into their strengths in terms of offensive play calling and scheme. And I know you probably have some words on that. You were being pretty critical at one point of the way Oregon was running their offense, given how effective they were being.
Yeah, I was doing a chat. So tell me again what you wanted me to touch on.
Well, I was just saying you were pretty critical of how Oregon was running the offense, right? I mean, Oregon was being pretty effective in that game, which there's a lot of it that does need to go to the defense. But I felt like Stroud did enough for them to win because, in part, Oregon kind of gave them a lot of opportunities. But also, I felt like Oregon, in the way they were playing offense, you should have been able to contain them enough that it shouldn't have been on Stroud's shoulders in the first place. Yeah,
Oregon had opportunities to really put the foot down with what Ohio State was giving them. And this is like, we're going to get into Kerry Coombs and how bad this defense is. But even on the first drive, Oregon ran the ball, and then decided to throw it on first, second, and third punt. And then in the second half, when they had an opportunity to really put Ohio State away, they ran the ball to get out of the hole on the side of the field they're on, and they decided to run or pass first, second, and third. They did it another time in the second half. And these are the things that really kept Ohio State even in the game at all. When you're facing an Ohio State, in my opinion, you have to continue to go for what's working, but also understand that these passing plays, if you don't have an elite quarterback, like sometimes we see these elite quarterbacks and it's almost like handoffs, especially in like a Lane Kiffin or Steve Sarkisian, not tonight, offense, where those passes are going to keep the clock moving, and it is more about what the receiver does after the play. In this one, it was straight dropbacks, and it was, low probability throws. Really disappointing that they didn't just keep their foot on the neck with the run game. But Josh, this is the time. This is the time in the show that Twitter and all of our rants today come full circle. I'm going to let you go first because I'm going to get into it too. This Ohio State defense is a complete disappointment to me. I think that Oregon did sandbag a little bit last week. But this Ohio State defense, Kerry Coombs has got the keys to a Ferrari, and he's rolling out a Toyota Camry. No offense to Camrys. Josh, take this for a little bit.
I think the most disappointing aspect to me is the level of linebacker play given the amount of talent that's been recruited at Ohio State. I don't understand how you have as many senior-laden guys, as many senior-laden positions as they've had, and a lot of seniority in the linebacker position the past couple of years, and there was no one ready to step into that position that was competent to play. A lot of what Oregon did in that game was just simple creation of conflicts. Oregon ran the ball pretty successfully. That put a lot of stress on Ohio State's defense. And then when they would start to move the ball laterally and they would have success with it, they would then, it would either be play action or some of it was actually RPO concepts, and they would leak guys to the second level, running backs, tight ends, particularly the tight ends. Now, Oregon didn't throw the ball a ton in that game, or successfully a ton, but where they really just it got to the point where they had no real answer to it was sort of those outside stretch plays. And then they would follow up with a little bit of quarterback run, and then they would throw off it, and the linebackers would crash down. They go over the top. And there was one point in that game, it was near where Oregon iced it, and for the life of me, I can't remember where, but they got a big first down in the goal line where they were trying to stop Oregon, and it flashed over to the sideline to Ryan Day, and I could read his lips clear as day. He said, "We can't stop it," and his hands went up, and he said, "We can't stop it." And it was the stretch play to, I don't know if it was Dye or Verdell, and they got the corner and got like an extra 12 yards on the play. And for whatever reason, Ohio State could not set the edge. And the inability to set the edge with standard fronts basically breaks the entire defense, because then you have to bring linebackers or safeties up to help. And once they're up, then people can get behind you very easily. And everything just starts, it's just dominoes. Everything starts to go apart. We've been really critical for a long time with the single high safety look that Ohio State runs. But let's be clear, this was really about fundamental football and the way you do gap assignments, the way that your defensive line should play assignment sound. I didn't think they played great in general, but they also weren't disruptive. But that single high safety scheme wasn't the problem here. It's almost like a 4-4 scheme that they run. That should help with the stuff that Oregon was running. It really shouldn't be like something that breaks your ability to stop what was a very basic run-heavy attack from Oregon. And that was, to me, almost the most disappointing aspect of it. So, I mean, that's my 2 cents. I don't know what you saw that was a little different than what I saw.
Yeah, so I tweeted at some point in the game, I said, Kerry Coombs has been coaching college football since 1983. His first opportunity at defensive coordinator, so not a position coach, not an associate this or that, was last year. That should not be the case at Ohio State. This is Gaddis at Michigan, having never called plays, getting the keys to their Pinto or whatever, and expecting him to be a seasoned guy. If you haven't proven yourself since 1983 by 2020, you're not the guy. So I don't know why an Ohio State has to go out and do this. This is something that we criticize Urban Meyer for is coaching, maybe hiring your buddies or things like that, and not having that just kind of, you got to be a little cutthroat in this business and put people in the right position, because your legacy and your success is contingent upon who you hire as coaches. They need a new linebacker coach too. There's a chat up on the screen, and I couldn't agree with this more. Felt very Haskins-like, lots of yards, not a lot of touchdowns. That's where we give Stroud a little bit of criticism, but I want to put this into perspective. Yes, he overthrew some guys. He should have run sometimes. He locked onto his first read a lot. But also, Josh, if that defense isn't on the field for all day, they probably get into a couple more possessions, and they're probably not stressed and putting everything on the quarterback's shoulders, digging out of a hole. They're running the ball a little more, and I bet they put up 35, 40 points if the defense wasn't having such a bad day. What Oregon was doing to Ohio State with Oregon's offense is what dictated what Ohio State had to do with their offense, which probably made Stroud look worse than he really is.
I think there's some truth to that. But I think, all right, I'm going to turn the conversation a little more negative. Is that all right?
That's what you do. You're the Grim Reaper.
So I would agree with you, except when you look at Ohio State's yardage and stats in this game. I mean, Ohio State had 612 yards. They outgained Oregon by over 100 yards. It was 505 to 612, 9 yards per attempt, 4.1 yards per carry. Those are good numbers. If you saw someone that had those stats, it would be pretty rare, I would think, to find a team that scores less than 30 points with over 600 yards of offense. It doesn't happen very often. So I think, as much as you were saying the defense's inability to get off the field mattered, I think a lot of it had to do with the basic inconsistency of the offense. And I'm gonna step down right now and just go through how many possessions did Ohio State have the ball? So turnover on downs, punt, touchdown, downs. So that was 5 full possessions in the first half. Second half, touchdown, downs, touchdown, punt, interception. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 11 possessions. That's not a super abnormal number. 11 possessions is pretty standard for a football game. But what's kind of crazy to me is how often they had 5 or 6 plays where they went 40 yards or 60 yards and didn't get anything for it. I say that. I mean, it was a little boom or bust, but it's a comment you had in, I think it was their Minnesota game, right? That was like all their drives were 4 to 6 plays or something like that. That it was kind of weird. They weren't really sustaining drives, even though they were scoring a lot. It's like when they had to, they couldn't really do it.
Yeah, and it's funny, if there's any Ohio State fans here that'll appreciate this, it's the same criticism we have with Michigan. Like, Michigan put up a bunch of points on Western Michigan, but it was because they had one drive that was 11 plays, 75 yards. It was the first drive of the game. The rest of it was huge plays. Well, what's the only touchdown in the game tonight for Michigan? One 60-yard run. I think it was about 60 yards. And we saw that with Ohio State last week, and that's what our big concern is. In the modern era, and you preach this a lot, in the modern era of college football, you should be able to score points given all the rules and the things that benefit the offenses, especially with three-yard downfield linemen. You should be able, when you have athletes on Ohio State's level, to be able to field an offense that can drive the field, that never goes 3 and out, that can eat clock, sustain drives, rest your defense, all of those things, but get points, field goals, and touchdowns by getting 7, 8, 10, 15-yard drives or play drives. And we didn't see that last week from Ohio State, and that was a concern going in this game, because if you have a lot of points, but it's all feast and it's no, little bit here and there, that's a concern when you face a real defense. And today they face a defense without their 2 best players, and still that was a problem. So as we got to wrap this up. We're going to re-air this piece if you want to watch it again. We got to wrap this up. But let's talk about this for Oregon going forward and Ohio State going forward. Do you feel like Oregon 1 is in a good shape in the pack, and then Ohio State in the big? I mean, I feel like both of these teams have a little room to recover and get healthy, but I don't know how we view these teams coming out of this game, because it was still a 1-score game.
It's tough. I mean, these were really good teams in general. They had a lot of talent, but you kind of have to use the eye test a lot when you come out of games early in the season to sort of gauge where 2 teams are. Look no further than Illinois, Nebraska, right? Where are Illinois and Nebraska now? I mean, Illinois lost to Virginia like 40-10 or something today. I forget the exact score, but it wasn't close. So when you watch 2 teams have a close battle, it's really hard to judge. Now, I expected these to be good teams, so you can assume they'll be good teams going forward. But I feel like some of the warts that they've shown are concerning. And something I pointed out is the Minnesota game today, right? So Minnesota was playing who were they
Miami
playing?
of Ohio.
Miami of Ohio. They won by
5.
So Ohio State looked really bad defensively in that game. We assumed Minnesota was this resurgent team. I thought Ohio State would win big in that game, largely because I thought that was a paper tiger for Minnesota. I think I was right about the Minnesota part. I think I maybe underestimated how far behind Ohio State was going to be defensively. And if those start to be your takeaways, then I get a little concerned that this game isn't going to necessarily translate to run the table and come back and meet in the playoffs. I'm honest. That's what I am, and that's what we try to do on the show. And I'll say something further. Oregon's game plan in this game with Ohio State is something we've seen several times with the RPO teams, really starting that 2018 Clemson-Alabama championship. Bleed yards between the 20s and then hunker down in the red zone. They dared Ohio State to do certain plays and gave up chunk yardage through most of the field, and then they tried to clamp down and play them straight up in the red zone because the RPO is broken. And if a team has high talent and they guard an RPO, you can't – if you try to play them straight, you end up giving up explosives. So you let them kind of march the field, and when it compresses, the RPO goes away because your safeties can't really get burned over the top. And that's what they did, and it was successful. I think that's concerns for Ohio State and their efficiency because red zone scoring becomes the big deal. But all that stuff, I don't know that that's sustainable for Oregon long term. I don't know that I saw a ton from Oregon that makes me super excited. If you start to buy the argument that Minnesota and Oregon are showing that Ohio State's rushing attack isn't great, because again, Minnesota had about 100 yards rushing on Miami of Ohio. So it may be an Ohio State problem. It may be. Those are the two data points I have. And if you're Ohio State, if someone like Oregon has the ability to do that to you, someone like Iowa or Michigan or someone else like that is probably going to be able to do it too. So I think both these teams, frankly, come out of this game with a lot of question marks. This may not matter for conference races, but there's stuff that's got to be patched up for both teams.
Yeah, and just to close it out, I think I'm a little more positive than you, especially on Oregon. I think that they showed that they can be a physical football team. I saw more from the quarterback than I've seen in his last two appearances, which is encouraging. I think they can build on that. I think they got to get him running the ball a little bit more. I know he's coming off of ACLs and all that. They got to get him running the ball.